In the frozen north of China, where breath becomes fog and sound disappears beneath ice, there exists a city that has never forgotten. Harbin. Here, among colored lights and ice sculptures, the past freezes in silence. But when the ice melts, shadows rise to the surface. Harbin is located in northeast China's Heilongjiang province, receiving cold winter winds directly from Siberia. Winter temperatures routinely drop to -16 degrees Celsius, with annual lows of -25 degrees not uncommon. Some winters, the temperature plummets to -40 degrees. Every year, millions of visitors flock to the Harbin International Ice and Snow Festival, the largest celebration of its kind in the world. Over 600,000 square meters of ice palaces, towers, and sculptures gleam under multicolored lights. Deionized water creates ice blocks as transparent as glass. The festival generates billions in revenue and draws 18 million visitors annually. But just 24 kilometers south of this winter wonderland, in the Pingfang district, stand the ruins of something far darker. Abandoned buildings, crumbling foundations. A place where screams once echoed through laboratories designed for death. This is the story of Unit 731, a story the ice tried to bury, a story that refuses to stay frozen. In 1931, Imperial Japan invaded Manchuria, establishing the puppet state of Manchukuo. The occupation gave Japan control over vast territories and, more importantly, access to an unlimited supply of human test subjects. In the mid-1930s, a Japanese military physician named Shiro Ishii received authorization to establish a biological warfare research facility. The location chosen was deliberate. Harbin sat at the edge of Japanese-controlled territory, far from prying eyes, bordered by Russia to the north and Korea to the east. In 1936, Unit 731 was officially established in the Pingfang district, approximately 24 kilometers south of Harbin city center. The facility was disguised under the innocuous name Epidemic Prevention and Water Purification Department of the Kuomintang Army, but purifying water was never the purpose. The complex covered 6.1 square kilometers, designated as a special military zone. 150 buildings rose behind walls, dry moats, and high-voltage electric fences. Inside were laboratories, operating rooms, prison cells, and multiple cremation facilities. The compound employed several thousand personnel, including 300 researchers, doctors, and bacteriologists. Unit 731's mission was clear from the beginning: to develop biological and chemical weapons for use in warfare. This violated the 1925 Geneva Protocol, which banned such weapons. Japan had not ratified the treaty. They saw the international ban as proof of the weapon's effectiveness. The facility operated with 8 divisions. Division 1 focused on bacteriological research, studying plague, typhoid, anthrax, and cholera. Division 2 researched field deployment methods for biological warfare. The remaining divisions handled administration, clinical diagnosis, and the production and storage of bacteriological agents. To conduct their research, Unit 731 needed test subjects. They called them Marutas, logs of wood, as if human beings were nothing more than timber to be cut down and burned. The victims came from everywhere: political prisoners, anti-Japanese partisans, common criminals, the homeless, the mentally disabled, children, pregnant women, the elderly. Most were Chinese, but victims also included Russians, Koreans, Mongolians, and possibly American British, and French prisoners of war. According to historical records, at least 3,000 people died from direct experimentation at the Pingfang facility alone, but the true death toll was far higher. When Unit 731 deployed their biological weapons in the field, testing plague bombs, and contaminated fleas on Chinese villages, Estimates suggest that between 200,000 and 300,000 additional people were killed. No one who entered Unit 731's prison ever left alive. Today, the ruins of Unit 731 stand as a museum and memorial site. Free admission. Open Tuesday through Sunday. Located at number 47 Xinjiang Street, Pingfang District. But ask the locals, especially the older residents, and they'll tell you something the guidebooks don't mention. They say that on the coldest nights, when temperatures drop below -25 and the wind howls through the abandoned structures, you can hear something carried on the air. Not quite voices, not quite screams, something in between. A chorus of the frozen dead. The Pingfang district was once a cluster of 10 villages. When the Japanese military seized the land in the 1930s, residents were forcibly relocated. The villages were demolished. The land became a forbidden zone. After the war ended in 1945, the Japanese destroyed most of the buildings before fleeing. They wanted to erase all evidence, but they couldn't demolish everything. The foundations remain. The bacterial laboratory, the frostbite testing facility, the special prison, the boiler room, the crematorium. 23 key locations still stand, scattered across the site. Local residents avoid the area after dark. Not because of government restrictions, the museum is well lit and patrolled, but because of what they've experienced, what they've seen, what they've heard. An elderly man who lives near the site reported that sometimes, when walking past the ruins at dusk, he sees silhouettes in windows that no longer have glass. Shadows moving in buildings that have been empty for 80 years. A photographer who visited the site during winter twilight claimed that when he reviewed his images later, faces appeared in the fog and ice that he hadn't seen while shooting. Translucent, distorted, eyes frozen open. Younger residents, those who grew up after the museum opened in the 1980s, share stories passed down from their grandparents. Stories about the screams that echoed from the compound during the war. How the Japanese soldiers would drag prisoners outside in the dead of winter, strip them naked, and force their arms into barrels of water until frozen solid. Then they would shatter the ice and observe how long it took for gangrene to set in. The locals remember. They remember the smoke that rose from the crematoriums day and night, carrying the smell of burning flesh across the villages. They remember the trains that arrived in darkness, packed with prisoners. They remember that those trains always left empty. Some say the spirits of the victims never left, that they're trapped here, frozen in the moment of their deaths, unable to move forward into whatever comes next. There's a particular spot on the grounds, near the remains of the special prison, where visitors report feeling an overwhelming sense of cold that has nothing to do with the weather. Even in summer, standing in that location, people describe a chill that penetrates to their bones. Some become dizzy. Some experience sudden nausea. Most don't stay long. The museum staff downplay these accounts. They focus on the historical documentation, the photographs, the preserved equipment, the testimonies of surviving Japanese soldiers who broke their silence decades after the war. But late at night, when the museum is closed and the security guards make their rounds, they walk quickly through certain sections. They don't linger near the prison cells. They avoid the crematorium ruins after dark, because some memories, they say, are too powerful to fade. Some horrors are too great to be forgotten. And in Harbin, where winter lasts 6 months and temperatures preserve everything, perhaps even trauma can be frozen in time. When the Soviet Red Army advanced toward Harbin in August 1945, Unit 731 received orders from Tokyo. Destroy everything. The Japanese military worked frantically. They dynamited buildings. They burned documents. They executed the remaining prisoners, approximately 300, using poison gas or lethal injections. 600 Chinese and Manchurian laborers were shot to prevent them from testifying. But here's where the story becomes complicated. Despite the widespread destruction, rumors persisted that certain underground sections of the facility were never fully demolished. That beneath the ruins, sealed laboratories and storage chambers might still exist, containing specimens, equipment, and documents that the Japanese never managed to destroy. Urban explorers and amateur historians have long speculated about tunnels connecting different parts of the compound. The facility was massive, 6.1 square kilometers. Only 23 locations have been officially identified and preserved. What about the rest? In the early 2000s, during archaeological surveys of the site, researchers discovered sealed rooms that hadn't been documented in any surviving Japanese records. What was inside? The Chinese government has never publicly disclosed the complete findings. Then there are the researchers themselves. General Shiro Ishii, the man who led Unit 731, was never prosecuted for war crimes. Neither were his top scientists. Why? Because the United States wanted their data. Immediately after Japan's surrender, American military officials began negotiating with Ishii and his colleagues. The deal was simple: provide all research findings, all experimental data, all documentation of the human experiments, and in exchange, receive immunity from prosecution. The deal was accepted. Pharmaceutical company presidents, members of Japan's self-defense forces. One survivor who worked at Unit 731 as a teenager later expressed resentment that his superiors prospered while he, having witnessed the atrocities, was told to never speak of what he'd seen and was barred from medical professions. The United States Department of Justice confirmed in a 1998 letter to the Simon Wiesenthal Center that American authorities did grant immunity in exchange for what they described as a great deal of information that would give the United States a significant advantage in biological and chemical warfare development. But did the Americans receive everything? Some conspiracy theorists argue that Ishii and his colleagues held back their most valuable findings, creating a bargaining chip for their continued freedom and prosperity. That somewhere, perhaps in private collections or hidden archives in Japan, the complete records of Unit 731's experiments still exist. There's another mystery that haunts the site. Between 1946 and 1948, after the war ended and Unit 731 was destroyed, plague outbreaks killed at least 30,000 people in the Harbin area. Historians believe plague-infected animals were deliberately released by fleeing Japanese personnel as a final act of biological terrorism. But some locals whisper a different theory, that the plague wasn't released intentionally, that something escaped from the ruins, from sealed rooms that were damaged but not destroyed, from underground chambers that the demolition teams never found. That Unit 731's legacy continued to kill long after the soldiers left. In 2002, Chinese researchers at an international symposium on bacteriological warfare estimated that approximately 580,000 people were killed by Japanese germ warfare and human experiments. The American historian Sheldon Harris puts the number at over 200,000 deaths directly attributable to Unit 731's activities. The Japanese government officially acknowledged Unit 731's existence in 1988, more than 4 decades after the war ended. Even then, they offered no apology, no reparations, no official recognition of the specific atrocities committed. In Japanese history textbooks, Unit 731 is rarely mentioned. When it is discussed, the descriptions are vague, sanitized. The Ministry of Education has repeatedly censored detailed accounts from school curricula. The result is a form of collective amnesia, an entire generation growing up without knowledge of what happened in Harbin, without understanding that their country developed biological weapons capable of killing everyone on Earth several times over, and that they tested those weapons on living human beings. Some argue this silence is intentional, that powerful families, descendants of Unit 731 personnel, who became influential after the war, work to suppress the truth. That certain pharmaceutical companies, whose foundations were built on data obtained from human experiments, prefer the past remain buried. The conspiracy goes deeper. In 2011, when Chinese officials requested DNA samples from human remains found near a Japanese Army medical school, remains that might help identify victims of Unit 731, the Japanese government rejected the request. Why? What are they protecting? What are they afraid might be discovered? The questions remain unanswered. And in Harbin, in the Pingfang district, the ruins stand silent, waiting. To understand what remains at the Unit 731 site, we need to visit it ourselves. Not during museum hours, surrounded by tourists and guided tours, but in the depth of winter, when the temperature drops to -30 degrees and Harbin transforms into its truest form, a city of ice and memory. The journey begins at Harbin's Central District, near the famous Heilongjiang pedestrian street, where the Ice Lantern Festival draws crowds with its glowing sculptures and carnival atmosphere. From there, it's a 45-minute drive south. The city gradually falls away. High-rise buildings give way to industrial zones and to empty fields covered in snow. The ruins sit at the end of a road that seems to lead nowhere. Barbed wire fences, remnants from the original compound, still surround portions of the site. In winter twilight, around 4 p.m. when darkness begins to fall, the temperature drops rapidly. -25, -30. The kind of cold that makes exposed skin burn within seconds. The main museum building is closed for the evening, but the outdoor ruins remain accessible. The foundations of demolished structures jut from the snow like broken teeth. The bacteria laboratory, a 3-story building with basement levels, stands partially intact. 2 floors were devoted entirely to prison cells, where subjects were held before experiments. Using thermal imaging equipment, we scanned the laboratory ruins. The results are unusual. While most of the structure registers at ambient temperature, matching the surrounding environment, certain sections show temperature variations. Pockets of warmth that shouldn't exist in an abandoned building during a Harbin winter. The most significant reading comes from what appears to be a sealed entrance to the lower levels. According to architectural surveys, the basement extended deep underground. The Japanese military used these subterranean chambers for experiments they wanted to keep hidden even from other Unit 731 personnel. We moved to the crematorium ruins. According to records, this facility operated continuously, burning bodies to destroy evidence. The ovens were large enough to incinerate multiple victims simultaneously. Standing near the remnants, we activate audio recording equipment designed to capture sounds at frequencies beyond normal human hearing. At first, nothing. Wind, the distant hum of traffic from the main road. Then, something else. A low-frequency oscillation, not quite mechanical, not quite organic. The equipment registers it as approximately 18 hertz, below the range of human hearing, but capable of causing psychological effects. Anxiety, fear, the sensation of being watched. Is it residual vibration from the building's structure? Underground water movement? Or something else? We proceed to the special prison area. This is where subjects designated for the most extreme experiments were held in isolation. Cells measured less than 2 meters square. No heating. In winter, prisoners froze slowly over days, while doctors monitored their deterioration. The atmosphere here feels different, heavier. Several members of our team report sudden headaches. One experiences vertigo and needs to step away. The thermal camera picks up another anomaly, a humanoid heat signature in what should be an empty cell. We approach carefully. The signature dissipates before we reach it. The cell is empty, completely empty. No explanation for what the camera detected. As full darkness falls, the temperature drops to -35. Our equipment begins to malfunction. Camera batteries drain rapidly, despite being rated for extreme cold. The audio recorder produces bursts of static interference that shouldn't occur with our shielded equipment. We discover something unexpected near the boiler house ruins. Partially buried in snow, a small metal container. Inside, frozen solid, is what appears to be a laboratory journal, written in Japanese. The pages are brittle, damaged by decades of exposure, but portions remain legible. Dates from 1944. Technical notations about bacterial cultures and infection rates. And names, not Japanese names, Chinese names. Lists of test subjects. This wasn't supposed to be here. According to all historical accounts, the Japanese destroyed all documentation before fleeing. Yet here it is, abandoned in the ruins. Either they missed something in their panic to escape, or someone returned after the war and deliberately left it. The final location we investigate is the perimeter wall, near what was once the main gate. According to survivor testimonies, prisoners arrived here by train, usually at night. The trains would pull up to a dedicated platform, and victims would be marched directly into the compound. They never saw Harbin, never saw anything except the high walls and the buildings where they would die. Standing at this spot, wind cutting through multiple layers of clothing, breath freezing instantly into ice crystals, we attempt to imagine what those final moments must have been like. The confusion, the terror, knowing you were entering hell and there would be no escape. Our investigation concludes as a snowstorm begins to move in from the north. Visibility drops rapidly. We make our way back to the vehicle, carrying the discovered journal, the temperature readings, the audio recordings. Do we have proof of paranormal activity? No, but we have anomalies, unexplained phenomena. And we have something perhaps more valuable, a tangible connection to what happened here. Physical evidence that the past is not as completely erased as some would prefer. Back in central Harbin, the ice festival blazes with light and color. Families pose for photographs in front of enormous ice sculptures. Children slide down ice chutes, laughing. Music plays from speakers embedded in frozen structures. The contrast is jarring. 24 kilometers away, ruins stand in darkness. The two Harbins, one that celebrates, one that remembers. Harbin is a city of contradictions, light and darkness, life and death, ice that preserves and ice that kills. Every winter, the Harbin International Ice and Snow Festival attracts millions of visitors from around the world. They marvel at sculptures carved from blocks of the Songhua River, the same river where winter swimmers still break through ice to dive into freezing water, continuing a tradition that stretches back generations. The festival generates billions in revenue. Hotels fill, restaurants overflow. The city becomes a celebration of winter's beauty. But beneath the beauty lies memory. In the southern suburbs of the city, at number 47 Xinjiang Street, the exhibition hall of evidences of crime committed by Unit 731 of the Japanese Imperial Army receives visitors. More than 3.5 million people have walked through its halls since the facility. Reopened with expanded exhibitions, they see photographs, read testimonies, view preserved equipment used in experiments, stand before a wall inscribed with the names of identified victims, a list that continues to grow as researchers uncover new documentation. The museum serves a critical purpose. It ensures the world does not forget. It demands acknowledgement of atrocities that some still deny or minimize. It gives voice to victims who died without names, referred to only as numbers or as Marutas, logs. But museums can only preserve what is documented. They cannot capture everything. The psychological horror of being reduced to a test subject. The physical agony of experiments conducted without anesthesia. The absolute helplessness of knowing you would die slowly, in pain, while doctors took notes. Some wounds cannot be displayed behind glass. Some traumas cannot be catalogued and explained. Perhaps this is why the legends persist, why locals still speak of strange phenomena around the ruins, why visitors report inexplicable experiences. Not because ghosts literally haunt the grounds, but because the magnitude of suffering that occurred there created an imprint that cannot be easily erased. Memory as weight, especially in a place like Harbin, where cold preserves everything, where ice can hold secrets for months before releasing them in spring. The true horror of Unit 731 is not in ghost stories or urban legends. The true horror is in the documented facts, that thousands of human beings were subjected to unimaginable cruelty in the name of military science, that the perpetrators escaped justice, that many prospered after the war, living comfortable lives while their victims remained nameless and forgotten for decades, that the complete truth is still suppressed, still denied, still minimized. And perhaps the deepest horror is how easily it could happen again, how quickly human beings can dehumanize others when given official sanction, how thin the veneer of civilization becomes when military necessity is invoked. The ice sculptures of Harbin's winter festival will melt in March or April. Workers will dismantle the largest structures using controlled demolition to prevent them from collapsing dangerously as temperatures rise. The snow will recede. The Songgua River will thaw. Spring will transform the city once again. But in Pingfang, the ruins remain. They do not melt. They do not fade. They stand as testament, as warning, as memory frozen in concrete and rusted metal. Every year, new visitors discover Unit 731 for the first time. They arrive knowing nothing of its history, perhaps drawn by curiosity about a site mentioned briefly in a guidebook. They leave changed, shaken, unable to reconcile the horror of what they learned with the normalcy of the world outside. This is important, this discomfort, this inability to look away. Because the moment we become comfortable with such history, the moment we accept it as merely something that happened long ago and far away, is the moment we risk allowing it to happen again. Harbin stands at the intersection of memory and amnesia, between remembering and forgetting, between honor and denial. The Ice Festival brings light, joy, beauty. These things are real and valuable. But so too are the shadows, the silence, the unmarked graves scattered around Pingfang. A city that forgets its past has no future. But a city that only remembers its past cannot move forward. Harbin walks this line every winter, celebrating and mourning, building monuments of ice that will vanish, and monuments of memory that must endure. Perhaps the real question is not whether ghosts haunt the ruins of Unit 731. The real question is whether we, the living, can bear witness without becoming haunted ourselves. Whether we can acknowledge such darkness without being consumed by it. Whether we can remember the dead without forgetting how to live. In the end, Harbin teaches us that ice preserves everything. Beauty and horror, joy and suffering. The frozen sculptures that draw millions of tourists, and the frozen ground where thousands died in experiments designed to weaponize disease. The ice does not judge, it simply holds. And when it melts, everything it held rises to the surface. This is Harbin, city of ice, city of light, city of shadows that stretch across 80 years and refuse to fade. Some things should never be forgotten. Some ice should never melt. Somewhere further south, in the ancient city of Xi'an, beneath tons of earth and centuries of silence, an emperor waits, not dead, not alive, guarded by thousands of soldiers frozen in clay. They say he was buried with rivers of mercury and mechanisms designed to kill anyone who disturbs his rest. They say no one has entered his tomb and returned. Next time on Mystery Frontier, the emperor who never died.